In this video, we're going to make a very basic calculator that can do addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. Let's have a look at the finished versions first. In Scratch, press A for addition, and we get told what the addition is. In Python, again, we choose A, S, M, or D. I might do multiplication this time. And in JavaScript, I'll do division. I press D. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the finished code, and then we'll build it from the ground up. So you can see you get a statement that tells the user what to do. We get their input, save that in a variable called ask. We ask them for the first number and save that in a variable called number1. We get the second number, save that in a variable called number2. And then we say, out of this first option, if they pressed A for addition, well then we will reply with the variable number1 plus the number2. If they pressed S for subtraction, we will respond with the variable number1 minus the variable number2, and so forth. And you can see in Python it's essentially the same thing. We get the user input, we convert it to an integer because by default Python and JavaScript accept strings as user input. Convert it to an integer, and if they pressed A, well then we would output number1 plus number2. If it was S, number1 minus number2, multiply number1 times number2, division, number1 divided by number2. And similarly with JavaScript, same logic, slightly different syntax. Prompt box, save it in variable called ask. Get the first number, get the second number. Here is where we convert number1 and number2 into integers, and we save that in a new variable called int number1, just so that we know which one we're dealing with. And if they pressed A, well then we would output int number1 plus int number2 from the ground up. This statement lets the user know what's going on. Then we go to the ask blocks. And this gives us now an input area where the user types in A, S, M, or D to dictate the control flow of the program. Now we want to save that as a variable called ask. Make a variable called ask and set ask to the user input. And it's always a good idea while we're doing our programs to just have a look. So if we check that box, we can see what populates that variable. Enter the first number and save that in a variable called number1. Set number1 to the answer at this point. Okay, so let's test our program so far. Instead of clicking on it, I'm just going to add the flag event. So if I press S, I can see that S is filled into this variable. Enter the first number. If I put in 10, I can see that is entered, and the second number, I can see that number is in that variable. So basically we've got the user's input, and in Scratch we don't need to do any conversion, so they are numbers. So our first if statement will be if ask, that is the user input, is equal to A, then do something. And the thing we want to do is to calculate variable 1 plus variable 2. Okay, so let's just test that our program works at this point. I'm going to go A because that's the only one we've tested. 20 plus 25, or 225. So that's working fine. So from this point we can duplicate, and if it equals S, well then we subtract. Multiply. And divide. I'm going to test it with the variable still checked. And now that I have checked that, let's try it. M for multiply. Great, and one more time, I just want to check that the negatives work. So subtract. Moving on to Python. So at the moment our output is going to be this, and the user's input is going to be stored in a variable called ask. So let's just test that this part works. The next two variables are storing the user's input and converting them to integers. So we use the int method, and inside of that we put in the question. So now let's test all of our variables. Okay, testing works. So if the user types in A, we'll then print number 1 and number 2. So 20, 30. Okay, so I use the if ask is equal to A, not the single equals, but if ask is actually A, if the user typed in A, then do this. Otherwise, if the user types in S, well then number 1 minus number 2. Quick test. S 50 minus 80, negative 30. And we continue on for the next two. Now let's move on to JavaScript. Variable called ask is assigned the value of the user prompt box. So the prompt puts up the prompt box, and the ask variable allows us to store it. So I could type in A, and it's stored in the variable called ask document.write Just some slight different syntax. In Python, we don't need that var keyword. In JavaScript, we need the var keyword to declare the variable, and we need the semicolon at the end. Okay, we get two numbers from the user, store them in two different variables, and we want to convert those variables into integers. I'm going to do alert just so I can do a quick test of what the value of these variables are at this point in our program. First number 20, second number 30. So 20 is the value of the first, and 30 is the value of the second. Now there is also a function in JavaScript called typeOf that will tell you whether it is a string or an integer. That tells me at this point in the program that int number 1 is a number. So it's very handy sometimes in your programs to work out what data type your data is at different points. Okay, now we do our conditional statements. So if ask, which is really user input, is A, then do something. So we've got parentheses. Here is where we put our command. Ask is equal to A. Then do curly braces, and the block of code inside here will run. And I've just said write to the document the sum of number 1 and number 2. I have to put in the string version of A here. Okay, now I can do the rest of the statements. So if the user press A, run this block of code. If the user input is S, run this block of code. If it was M for multiply, then multiply number 1 by number 2, or if they press divide, multiply number 1 by number 2. So let's try D for divide. Yeah, so this is a basic calculator in text form. As you develop, you could make buttons for the user, and you could add in modulo and square root functions, of course, build on this foundation. Just wanted to get this simple calculator set out and get some good basic functions working.